Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra,
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people.
associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked.
and sometimes what didn't,
You will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts.
And inspire you to do even greater things.
In the first part of this episode, I'm in conversation with Mohan Ram, a senior professional from the IT industry who has played various roles, right from developing networking software to business line management, and who is also my colleague at PM Power Consulting as a coach. In this first part, Mohan shares his growing years in a conservative family in Thanjavur, how his life was comfortable, not luxurious, and how the culture and the family values stayed with him and influenced his life. How he's getting into IT was more of a chance, but the challenges of applying logical thinking and solving problems for others, and the satisfaction he got out of seeing his solutions being used by others, let him stay on and continue in IT. He's moving from systems engineering and networking to other domains that are using technologies, even in the commercial applications. His opportunity to be mentored and coached by very good managers as a core aspect of how he was able to develop his career, and also the rub-off that he had on his own styles of working. He discovered his strength of going beyond just technology and connecting with customers that was identified by one of his mentors as a strength. And his feeling thankful about being at the right place at the right time to get always challenging opportunities. His interest in ancient wisdom, yoga, Vedanta, music, etc., all help him find and keep a balance in life. The support and the concern that he received from friends and family when he was looking at doing some work in IT, which was not the tradition, the profession that most others took in the family. The importance of having and being a good mentor and learning to look at the forest and not get lost among the trees as an advice that he got, which helped him leverage his strength of paying attention to detail. Switching to project and program management roles, and he stresses the need for everyone to understand the nuances of project management. Hi, Mohan. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Hello, Shiv Sivaguru. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Actually, I was quite curious, I would say, when we reconnected after so many years, a short while ago, and then when you described what all you have been doing in the meanwhile, I felt that this is definitely a story that our listeners would love to hear. So we will start with a self-introduction. You can talk about your origin story, how you got into IT, and then probably your career trajectory, the various things that you've done, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. Yes, it was indeed nice connecting with you, Shiv Sivaguru. Always, back, if I trace back to our days in Tata Unisys, and, if, last 30 odd years, it's been a long time, and it was, very good, nice connecting up with you. So, so if I self-introduction, always a difficult one, but let me start. I mean, I grew up in a fairly conservative middle class family. We hail from Thanjavur district actually, and a lot of family. We've been as a family together for a very long time. Family, extended family. So I grew up in that kind of an environment. Thanks to my grandfather, who basically instituted a lot of this family culture. So I was brought up in that kind of a culture. And I had a fairly conservative upbringing, very life was comfortable, not necessarily luxurious, but it was, it was with a lot of people together. So I think that also brought in a sense of belongingness, which we carry even to this day. There's a very strong family bondage and connect. And that teaches you a lot of things in life. I can certainly relate a lot of my professional and other aspects of life to my, to that family and family culture in which I was actually brought up. If you really look at my family, I'm sort of the odd man out. I would have been I don't know, maybe a chartered accountant or a lawyer or maybe a government servant, because this is what essentially, people were in my family, and we pretty much followed suit actually. But then, I somehow had an affinity, which I realized very late, and I got into IT and computer science, I would say in hindsight, by chance. But then once I got into it, I did realize that I had a certain flair for it. Initially, in terms of understanding, what really attracted to me to this was in terms of the space it had for logical thinking and ability to correlate certain things and then put it to action. That was something that initially excited me. As I sort of slowly built my career in the industry, the thing that really most excited me the most was the software that we used to write. And those days we used to just write software, not necessarily thinking about whether it was good quality software or otherwise. But then when you actually put it to use, even when you tested it, the fact that it actually went and solved certain problems was very, very exciting. And that was really most gratifying for me. And it was like something that I really got hooked on. So in my initial days of my career, this is what really kept me excited in this area. Also, the aspect of working with clients, understanding some of their problems and relating to it, and then trying to solve their problem through whatever we were doing as part of application development was very interesting. Slowly, my sort of life gravitated to more, systems engineering, networks, and then and slowly looked at some of those technology areas, and we actually found that there was a lot of relevance for those technologies even in the commercial world. As an example, banking and finance. So some of the compute technologies that were typically used for defense, or for example, very specialized applications like weather forecasting, actually found place in commercial usage as well, in the area of, say, banking and finance, telecommunications, etc. So it was actually, I don't know, by chance I happened to come to the industry at the right time, at the right place, and a lot of things fell in place. I did do my fair share of mistakes and blunders, but eventually I think things worked out. Subsequently, along the line, when I changed a few jobs on the way, and then had the benefit of some very good managers who mentored me, coached me. And one of the important things that I realized was it took a good manager to sort of show me the mirror and say, I think you should also look beyond technology, because you seem to have some flair for understanding clients' pain points. And then, you're able to sort of, if you can basically link this together, I think the techno business aspect of professional life, I think was, in fact, he sort of seeded the idea initially to me that this could be a big differentiator. Something that I picked up more out of curiosity. I did make the transition with his help, with my manager's help. The transition was not easy, but thankfully I had him to sort of mentor me all through that course. If I really look back at my career in summary and substance, it basically started with a kid getting excited with some technical stuff here and there, and then ability to solve some specific problems, and going wide-eyed when some of those problems got resolved right in front of your eyes, to try and reach out to customers and understand some of their pain points, and bring it back to see how it could be solutioned, to managing people. And when you manage a workforce which is very diverse, both in terms of geography as well as culture, it's a very humbling experience. You learn a lot of things on the way, and it actually teaches you many aspects of life and opens up vistas which you probably never thought about. And then when you go and manage a business, which is like a typical P&L, I feel that I've been fortunate, blessed to be at the right time, at the right place, had the benefit of a lot of people who helped me along the way. And I did, of course, as I mentioned earlier, did my fair share of mistakes, but hopefully I didn't repeat the same mistake again, and made new ones and learned a lot of things along the way. And eventually I think things worked out. So that's been my sort of professional IT industry journey. I also have a lot of interests outside of my professional sphere, especially in terms of ancient wisdom, Vedanta, yoga, music, writing, etc. So, I'm at that phase of my life where I think balance is very important. And I'm looking forward to achieving that balance, and hopefully actually, in the process, achieve a lot more than what I have done with a singular focus all through my professional life. So this is sort of my next phase of my life, and I'm looking forward to making use of that balance and create something which is more satisfying for the next phase of my life, which hopefully is the next 20-25 years. So that's sort of the long and short of my story in the IT industry and how it all started.
Yeah, wonderful. And of course, my curiosity has been prompting me to ask a lot of questions. Let me try to see if I can start from where you had started. So when you said that you came from a family and the background where you might have probably got into a government job or a public service, when you wanted to do something different, something that was probably still emerging at that time or probably not so widely adopted or used by people. So what was the kind of either support or probably some questions that you had from maybe your cousins or friends or family?
It's a very good point, actually. In fact, I can still vividly remember an incident that happened, and it was I think the right way to put it is it was more like a trigger. So it was not much of I go and seek someone advising me or providing me some guidance from the family or something like that. No, I think the family was in general supportive of it. It's just that we were going in a particular direction and everyone sort of went along the tide. But in my case, what happened was I came across a fairly experienced and highly talented technical geek by name Uli. He was actually a German national, and he was based out of a place called Auroville in Pondicherry. And he was very closely associated with a gentleman by name, which was associated with a company called Orolec at that point in time, which was creating a lot of Orolec as a company was a small footprint company, but they were a niche player, but they were pretty well known, especially in the networking space. Apples to apples, their hardware to hardware was equated to any other hardware. But then I think their differentiation was in terms of they were one of the earliest to look at campus networking, metropolitan networks, and things like that. And all these were sort of emerging technologies at this point in time. And Uli was a hardcore computer science geek, and he was very closely associated with this. And as part of my master's project, I actually had the opportunity of working with Uli to create some really cool stuff when it came to network operating system. That is how my curiosity in software actually got triggered. So it was actually a trigger as opposed to doing something by design or someone sort of advising me to say that this is good for you, so why didn't you try it, right? It was just a hap chance meeting with Uli, and then he said this is what he's doing. And I was very attracted to him because the way he was living his life versus what he was doing on the technology side, they were like juxtaposed, right? I mean, they were diametrically opposite to each other. And a man who would actually possibly be sitting on the tree for hours together, just daydreaming, to come down and start writing a piece of code, which was actually not many people understood, to me was actually exciting enough to sort of build a relationship with him. So I think he was in my way, if I really think back, he was instrumental in triggering that curiosity in me. And that I think was what really got me hooked to software.
Yeah. If I remember right, Orlec also made these hardware, right? The cards and networking equipment.
Yes, they had that slot, the
Yeah.
network card actually. Yes. So
Yeah.
they were the OEMs for that. Yes.
Okay. So were you working on embedded kind of software, or were you developing applications around that?
Initially, it was basically some utilities. So Uli was actually responsible for doing a lot of work on the network operate. I mean, it's basically the firmware that was actually going, driving that card. My job was basically to create some utilities, but that was for a very short while actually. When I joined Tata Unisys, where you were, of course, my senior and someone I really looked upon in my early days of career, that was more like applications, right? So, we used to, typically learn software with an intent to go and implement it. So the learning was very limited to what was basically required for the job. I mean, for example, you learned some very basics about operating systems, but never really went deep into it. You learned a 4GL. If you remember those days back in the day, we used to have a 4GL called Mapper. And so we picked it up. One of our biggest clients, Bank of America, was a fairly big install base of Mapper. And, we found place in that. And that's how, so you learned certain things which were very specific, business driven, required for the project. You picked it up, you went and implemented it. So my transition from learning some of the basics to creating applications was very quick. It just, it jumped. And then, of course, later I actually came back to, systems and networks and things like that, because that was even more challenging. So I did a little bit of a loop, actually. It started with systems, went into applications, came back to systems. And then I did remain with systems and operating systems and networking for a very long time, almost for about 12 years plus. Because that was essential to create software products. And then, of course, later on, when the managed services era picked up post Y2K, once Y2K was over, for a lot of Indian services companies as well as for global systems integrators, that period was over. They needed to create something new, and outsourcing and managed services became the in thing. So that had to do a lot with facing customers, looking at programs, projects, and delivering solutions to them. Sometimes not based on your own software products, but also look at heterogeneous mix of software products and providing clients a sort of a single window experience and bringing it all together. So after about those 12 years of systems and network engineering, the next 10 years were almost in the application space, delivering solutions to customers, managing their expectations, and growing the install base.
Yeah, that is nice. You also mentioned that you had moved across organizations, across roles, and you said from systems, application systems, and all that. Whenever there was this kind of a change or a movement, what were the triggers? Was that something that you were looking for specifically, or something that you just found and then just thought you will try that?
Very good question. Actually, two things. The first trigger was actually boredom. I mean, I was a little bored of, the same things that you do. I found that whatever I was doing in the application space was not deep enough, and it was sort of getting into a bit of a monotony. And I wanted to really understand how operating systems work. How do we go one layer below? And if you look at the oversized stack, how do you sort of explore the various levels? And, and which is your sweet spot? How does it relate to creation of products and things like that? Which is where I actually, when I was working in applications I, out of sheer boredom and monotony, I took a call to get down to systems side, which is where I joined this organization called CDAC, Center for Development of Advanced Computing. I didn't think at that point in time whether it would work out or not. I think the main driver was in terms of can I explore something which was more technically challenging for me? That was the key driver. And sort of the event before for the driver, or the trigger to that driver, was basically a certain sense of monotony that had actually set in. So that was one example. The other example, that the reason why I actually moved out of CDAC and I joined HP, Hewlett Packard, at that point in time, was basically an opportunity. So someone from the HP R&D and labs, they had met me and said that some of the work that I was doing in CDAC could actually see much more broad-based, relevance in the because I think in some sense that person made me realize that where I was working was technically very interesting and challenging, which was okay, but in some sense it was also limiting because the avenues were somewhat restricted, and here there was an opportunity to broad base those avenues. So if I really look at my life, two important switches that I made, where the first one primarily was coming out of monotony. The second was basically someone who would actually help me see the opportunity of a bigger, help me see a bigger opportunity. Those were the two major triggers.
Yeah, you also mentioned the role of some managers. And in terms of your own roles, from being a technical, possibly individual contributor initially, to handling P&L. So how was your own approach to both understanding and delivering what is expected of the role? And when you became a manager, what was the influence that your earlier managers had on your managerial style?
Very good, very good. Because I think Shivaguru, you are really touching some of the key aspects of my career which are vivid in my mind, and both in a sense that where I faced maximum problems, and also where it was gratifying because eventually things worked out. So I couldn't have asked for a better set of questions coming actually. So the first one was a very interesting aspect of life where my manager actually came and told me whether I was willing to look at getting into a managerial career without really compromising my linkage. When I say linkage, fairly serious day-to-day tactical linkage with technology. And he says that techno business role actually could be very interesting. And one of the important things that he narrated to me is that I think a manager and a mentor, and he showed me the way, needs to understand the mentee well. And I think the best way to grab the mentee's attention is to be honest and say something about the mentee the way the mentor sees it, right? Now, whether the mentee agrees or not, it's a different story. I don't think you even get into a debate on that. If there is a disagreement, so be it. But in most cases, what the mentee will normally pick up is the honesty of purpose and the fact that there has been a very sincere attempt to observe you and consider certain options which are genuinely well-meaning for you, right? That is what really hooks you on to a mentor. In my case, I still remember one of the things that my manager told me as part of my coaching exercise with him. He says that you seem to be very detail-oriented, but you should, Mohan, you should learn to look at the forest and not just the trees. Now, this is something he told me about 25 years ago, but I still remember it to this date. What he meant and what I understood from what he said was that if I have a certain flair for being detail-oriented and getting down to brass tacks, not necessarily I should let it go, but that should not come in the way of me looking at the broader picture. Because if you don't have the broader view, then there is no point in, digging yourself a hole, howsoever deep it may be, because then, you just keep going down and you can't really come up in life. That was one of the key messages he gave. And he gave me through this analogy. He says, learn to look at the forest, not just the trees. And that helped me make the switch to project/program management roles. And this is my sort of belief, irrespective of whether a person chooses to remain in a technology space or whether he gets into a managerial space. In my view, everyone should understand nuances of project management. Because the nuances of project management teaches you how to, systematically go about things, how to mold your thought process in a way that lends itself for execution, because there's no point in ideating, right? I mean, if you can't execute it, then ideation is just about ideation, right? So I think for these two aspects, I think everyone, irrespective of their roles and responsibilities, should understand nuances of project management. If they can go through a structured course on project management, it's even better. Now, whether they are going to do a full-time project management, program management role, that's their call. But they need to understand the essence and the nuances of it, in my way, which I think is very, very important. And I would highly encourage people, irrespective of their trade, to understand project management in its most pristine form, because it helps them in so many ways. That is what happened to me as part of this mentoring and coaching initiatives. And I was able to sort of make that transition. It was a little difficult for me from an individual contributor techie role to a project management role. It was it took a little bit of time. However, there was method to this madness and a lot of mentorship support. And something that I took it away as a personal belief is that I think it's worthwhile for everyone to really understand what project management is and have an appreciation about it.
Yeah, I don't know whether the next question is related to project management, but when I look at what you mentioned as something that you like, that is interacting with customers and understanding their problems and so on, when you hear an expectation, either as a requirement or as a challenge that they are facing, and then come up with an approach or a solution to address that, and then you have, let's say, a project plan to realize that. So there is a level of abstraction that you need to be comfortable with, as well as attention to detail. Since you also mentioned that your manager pointed out that you are a person with a lot of attention to detail, how comfortable was it working in ambiguity? I asked him about how he was able to work in zones of abstraction and ambiguity while interacting with customers, understanding their requirements, and so on, and his strength of paying attention to detail to work out the specifications, the detailed project plan to execute, and how he's able to balance those. The answer to that question and a lot more in part 2 of the conversation. Don't miss that.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.